Hi, I'm Riley,
I am Evan,
and this is the Grey Line Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Grey Line Podcast, where today we're going to cover Black Knight Satellite. This follows on from our conversation about where we're from, more so in relation to observation, or at least the possibility of observation. Orbiting Earth for possibly centuries, thousands of years, up to 100 million years by some estimates, the Black Knight Satellite is simply an enigma. It has been captured by NASA multiple times and is a strange object that is orbiting the planet. There are a lot of theories. Some people say that it's simply a space blanket that has come off one of the space stations or a satellite. And there are also claims that there have been signals received from the Black Knight satellite. One in particular was from a Scottish astronomer, Duncan Lunan, and he said he has succeeded in decoding what has been sent by the Black Knight satellite, and that particular message is as follows. Start here, our home is Epsilon Bootis, which is a double star. We live on the 6th planet of 7, coming from the Sun, which is the larger of the two. Our 6th planet has 1 moon. Our 4th planet has 3. Our 1st and 3rd planets each have 1. Our probe is in the position of Arcturus, known in our maps. Now, that's a pretty straightforward message, and for anyone who doesn't necessarily believe it, Epsilon Bootis does in fact exist, but in terms of our scientific ability to view it, I think we are aware of 1 planet in that system, but we do not have the technology to see that far into space and actually confirm these details. Now, that being said, let's move on to the discussion. So I've got Riley here with me again, as usual.
Yep.
You today, Riley?
Hello. How you doing? So, I guess I'll go and start this one off. The theory is there's this black object that orbits our planet and it was found. Well, they first ever findings of it was from Nikolai Tesla, and he thought that he was getting radio signals from this object. It later was found that this was orbiting even before satellites were even in orbit at the time. So a lot of theories came up about this, and I think it scared a lot of the public because they didn't know what was going on at the time. And when these signals came in with Tesla, you know, he was astounded by it, and I think that's the first recognition of this thing actually floating around our planet and becoming quite known now as the Black Knight satellite.
Nikola Tesla. Now, when he received that, that was with one of the towers that he was building at the time too, wasn't it?
Yes.
Waden Cliff Tower.
Yes. I knew it
And
was.
now, do you, just as a quick side note, do you know the history of the Waden Cliff Tower? Do you know why? Oh, sorry, Warden Cliff Tower. Do you know why he was building that particular antenna at that particular point in time?
Wasn't it to pick up uh well, what we have today is Wi-Fi, I guess, in that sense. I'm not too familiar, but I know it was something to do with that at the time, right? Or am I wrong? I could be wrong.
No, pretty close. The whole premise behind it. Now, he did actually essentially lie to the person who was uh, paying for it.
Oh,
And while it was a transmission tower, what he wasn't telling this person was that it was actually designed for the wireless transmission of power.
uh, yes.
And that in itself is quite interesting, especially considering the fact that Nikola Tesla uh, always stated that he was getting these visions, and so all of his inventions were almost given to him in the form of blueprints, and he claimed that they were sent to him
Oh,
from extraterrestrial beings. Now, the
yes.
reason that I'm
Yep.
bringing this point up is because I'm thinking to myself, if he's receiving transmissions, as much as you can send transmissions through deep space, wouldn't it be easier or possibly even need a relay point? And
Yes.
the theory that I'm proposing behind this is that maybe that Black Knight satellite is in fact that relay point.
That makes a lot of sense. And as you said, now I remember about the visions he was having, and that's quite that's probably really possible. Yeah, like even with you saying our technology is not in the capabilities to even see other galaxies, close up, other planets, so to speak. Um, that would make a very a big point in the whole situation. As obviously why this satellite is here, and yeah, a relay of some sort or a beacon of some sort, obviously, that can actually send or receive signals makes a lot of sense and goes along with the whole thing of, why they're here and helping us out. So that could have been the whole thing too, is that they were trying to help him create inventions that would help us, later on in our future.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, as far as the Black Knight satellite's concerned, I mean, even with a race that has advanced technology, considering the fact how hard it is to see over such vast distances, I mean, physically see with telescopes and like all the technology that we do have, it's not necessarily going to be any different for an advanced civilization. It's not like they're going to have an ultra zoom telescope that can see through stars and dust and whatever else in the universe. So this
Yeah.
satellite is potentially uh, that observation deck that's sending them the data.
Yes, I can. Yeah, I agree. Like, there's got to be some way or some use for this thing, and it makes sense that it would, collect data through what it's seeing as it's going around our planet. And like you said, it could be observing us or anything that's going on here. And but honestly, like, for it to send out signals to certain people too, right? Like, it to to pinpoint somebody that was actually making an invention to open up our our field for, the things we have today, like obviously Wi-Fi and stuff. You know, it almost seems like it went for people that had the capabilities to know, hey, I can do this or I can invent this. I just need these. And at the time when our technology was not as advanced as obviously when Tesla was building his, advancements weren't even what we have today. So giving him, some insight on what he could design or build, they had to have gotten him to do it with the means of materials they had at that point, right?
Now, I've just also had a couple of other thoughts while I was doing research on the Black Knight satellite that I find quite interesting. A lot of people state, and this is mostly based on the translation of the signal from the Black Knight satellite, is that it's around about 13,000 years old or older. And
Yeah.
if you think about some of the discoveries that have been made, especially in relation to ancient alien or ancient astronaut theory, Göbekli Tepe is estimated to be 12,000 years old. Now, that seems a little bit convenient that it is that close or that similar in age to the Black Knight
Yeah.
satellite. And it would say to me that if you're looking at the ancient astronaut theory, that potentially the Black Knight satellite is there as that observation deck, and we are that subject. So, they potentially have kick-started the evolution of human by intervening in some point, and then they've watched us as we evolve to see what happens.
Honestly, that makes quite a lot of sense considering the time frame. Like that's pretty close, and I believe that that somewhere along the lines, this technology has been sitting here forever, and obviously observation is the key thing for this object or satellite. So I believe that, yeah, how many years back that this thing has been you know been up there, and as we've known it, which obviously isn't that long, like obviously long enough that it's been brought up so many times in topics. So I wouldn't disagree that you know this technology could have been here for a while, and like us now would have never really known about it until we got our satellites up or the space station to see that being there. So yeah.
It's definitely an interesting one, and it's captured a lot of attention over the years from people too. And even now, just looking at pictures from it, it's hard to say that that's a space blanket. Like, I can't
Yeah,
see
I
how that's a space blanket, especially because a space blanket's going to be quite small, whereas this object is clearly quite large.
and from where they got the shot of it, that it's a big piece. It's not a small little blanket, and I do understand that, yes, some thermal blankets can be pretty big, considering they got to cover a whole module or a part going up to space. But that seems a little too much for me to think, And I've seen a couple other pictures of it and thought to myself, well, there's no way. If a thermal blanket in space only lasts a few years, this thing has been around for how many? 13,000 or more, And it doesn't even look like it has even um it's so I don't know how far low it is into our orbit. It's low enough, and any lower, this thing would start to burn up. Like even a thermal blanket being at that close, you'd think it wouldn't be there for the very long, and it would be broken up in some sort of pieces. Now, understandably, there is loads. I mean, loads of space debris up in our atmosphere and floating around our orbit. Like there's so much of it. But this thing does not. I mean, does not look like anything NASA has ever made. And satellites we have now today have a unique pattern to them, or we know exactly what a satellite looks like. Um, where this thing, even if the government did put it up there, there was no really a reason why, as we have all these other satellites in space now anyway. So
Yeah,
it's a
and why keep something so secret if it's, I mean, we can obviously see satellites. I mean, we can even see satellites from the ground. So why would you keep something so secret, even if it was a sensitive piece of equipment? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we can still physically see it.
yes, and that's the bothering thing about it. It's like you can't cover up something that is obviously this close to our orbit, and it orbiting our planet, and it can move, change direction. You don't see a lot of things that are in our atmosphere that's just changing direction. And honestly, how has this thing not been hit by debris or that's another question, is like it's never been hit by anything. And a lot of these space pieces are like rocket parts, things that are probably just as big as the satellite. And nothing's ever, I've never seen anything or like anything in my research on it that would say that it's ever been knocked off its course or anything like that, right? It's always stayed in one spot. So
Yeah.
that makes me think that's not something, it's not something that's just sitting there like a an asteroid or a piece of ice, because this stuff wouldn't be there for very long, um, as this thing has been sitting there for.
Yeah, and there's a lot of footage and things out there that people have uh, come across, like footage from the ISS and things like that. And you look at some of the ISS feeds too, and this has always bothered me, is when you're watching the ISS live feeds. For a long time, it was actually a live feed,
Yeah.
but you'd see things that you couldn't explain, and they'd automatically cut to this blue screen. Now, what bothers me now these days is they've actually added a delay to that broadcast,
Oh,
which now gives them the time to go, oh, we can't let them see that. So it's cut.
I see.
And now there's actually, there's footage from before that that's leaked footage from the Black Knight satellite shadowing the ISS, which is, I mean, if it's following the ISS, it's observing the ISS. Like, doesn't that
Yeah,
say
I
something?
actually do remember that. Yeah, I actually do remember an article about that, and I thought that right there to me thought, wow, if this thing's obviously following this thing around our Earth, it obviously is not just a random object. Like think about space debris. It doesn't. I'm not sure space debris orbits. It might orbit our planet. I can't say that for sure. Obviously, if it's close enough, but being the size of most of this stuff, you'd think it'd just be floating there. It wouldn't just go, okay, well, space station just went around us, let's follow. It's not one of those things where you would think, like, I know our planet, our gravity and everything, when we throw a ball, we see all this stuff as being normal. Where when you're in space, a lot of that's thrown out the window. Like, you don't really know your north from your south up there because it's vast. It's just craziness that you'd think that this thing would follow us or follow our equipment around to observe and not think it's anything else other than a satellite.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you can't easily dismiss without. I mean, you look at all the facts. And when I say facts, I mean it is hard to verify a lot of these things, but at the same time, it's something that you can look at, and there are so many examples that it's hard to dismiss.
Well, like even even after the fact, like there were so many different um what are they called, reports on it. So like in 1954, it goes right from 1954 pretty much right to 1970s. And a lot of another claim was that the government did end up putting a satellite up in space. It was a project called the Black Knight, and they were going to put this thing up in space or whatever, and they supposedly did. And what happened was stories got around about this thing being up there, and they just covered it up. It was kind of a camouflage situation for like the whole thing. Even the satellite was camouflaged, which was make no sense considering what we have today. We don't cover up that we have like nobody in the world covers up that they put a satellite up in space. So why at this time did they cover up putting up the Black Knight?
It's very, very hard to cover up sending a gigantic rocket into space, too. It's one of those things that it's pretty obvious when you're launching rockets.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, it just makes me think that there's more to the story than there is. But I don't think this thing was uh, man-made at all. I think obviously even with like you say with the ancient aliens sort of thing, maybe one of our civilizations before us, but the only problem is how would they have put this thing up into orbit, without some sort of extraterrestrial or some sort of help is what I kind of going with, you know.
I can imagine that there would be the possibility for an ancient civilization to be able to put something into space simply because there are
Even the theories of
references to.
levitation,
Well,
you
there
know.
are theories, though, that there are a couple of civilizations that were essentially dabbling with what you would call nuclear power. Um,
Yeah.
there's a couple in particular that have what are supposedly architectural buildings, but they look very much like blueprints for uh, nuclear power plants or fusion plants. And that in itself is a little bit interesting. It's not the smoking gun, but it sort of leads to that idea that there was some sort of advanced race before our own that has essentially been lost to time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing about a lot of the history, especially with the Black Knight satellite, because um, observing it from where we are doesn't really help about like where there's not really too many stories, and a lot of it's been like locked up by NASA. So it's kind of like I want to know, even from looking at the picture right now, you can even see it's just you can't really not. I can't disclaim that as being anything else but something that is watching our planet, especially when it does look like a satellite, you know? So whether we created this thing to observe our own planet, or maybe this was made by one of our civilizations to observe space at that time, and it was just um, a lost relic, like you said, and we just stumbled upon it many years later.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely hard to dismiss that that's a possibility, but at the same time, you got to look at it and think to yourself, well, it's probably whether or not there was an ancient civilization that was advanced enough, it's probably more likely going to be something that is from outer space. And the only reason that I say that is because if you believe that this signal was decoded, and this is a signal that I think has been detected on more than one occasion. You know, the origin being Epsilon Bootis, that's definitely not on our planet. So, how do you explain that away?
Man, this is the whole reason why I like space, and this is why I like making space games. It's always about different galaxies and different. My whole love about space is that, it would be awesome to explore different solar systems and stuff. And that message being decoded, like, it kind of gives you hope in a sense that there is something else out there, or there's another civilization that is trying to call to us, and that the satellite is basically our, like you said, a beacon, or what's the other word you said?
Which one?
Yeah. When I said, like, it's not a beacon, but it's like
Some sort of relay station.
relay. Yeah, a relay. Sorry, yeah. I don't know why it's early, but anyway. but if it but if it is a relay, you know, for this other civilization to communicate with us, why not give them their pinpoints to the stars of where they are, and that's exactly what this code said. Now, whether or not, later on we end up getting to explore this and finding out that, hey, there's a whole different civilization out there that, it would blow the minds off anybody in the scientific field, um, about our history and life as we know it beyond our planet.
Yeah, and you got to think too with the Drake equation, just as a pure example. I mean, the likelihood of us being alone in the universe is pretty astronomical. The Drake equation is an equation that essentially takes all of the known universe and calculates the percentage in which there would be, alien life, and that's a pretty big number. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
thousands of possibilities of advanced civilizations, or even not advanced civilizations, even just normal civilizations. But on top of that, you've got to think too that in terms of the universe, we're fairly young. So the center of the universe is a long way away from us. And any civilization that is closer to the center of the universe is going to be a lot older and possibly more advanced than what we are.
Well, yes, that's yeah. I was kind of getting to that at that point too. Is like, yeah, is that we don't even know the advancements of all these other civilizations out there, if there are any out there. And as you said, the older back they go, they probably are way more advanced. Even to send uh, a satellite art to us, just to like, obviously to watch what's going on here. They obviously have the technology to know there's other civilizations out there too. They must know that there's more to the universe than we do at this stage of our young lives in the universe. But yeah, it's just neat to know that if that's the case, then we really are being watched. um maybe in a good way, is I which you could always hope for.
Well, there's always the theory that essentially Earth is like a giant zoo, and maybe they're just watching us from afar, just to out of curiosity more than anything.
Yeah, that's yeah. That I believe, there's a reason. There's obviously some sort of reason for all of this to come to light, and especially now. And my biggest thing on it too is like, now as long as it's been here, but how long has really anybody, like, I don't understand how any of these government agencies like NASA and stuff has not really investigated it further, you know? Um,
Well,
because a lot of
investigated
this
it
stuff.
further as far as we know. I think that's one of those sorts of things that they would definitely keep a secret. If it was an alien technology of some description, they're going to keep it for themselves. They don't really want to share that kind of thing.
Yeah, I get that, but it's kind of not really hidden in that sense, right? Because it's there. Everybody knows it's there. That are in this community that know. My thing is we can't. None of us as science, like the science community, or even us as theorists or people that are interested in this. We can't all get to space, and unless we're like rich, in
Elon
that space,
Musk.
or have SpaceX, but we don't have that technology just for us to go up and observe this thing, and it's funny that NASA have only taken a few snapshots. Like, obviously they probably do have more shots of this thing, which intrigues me because it would be nice to see more of this. It's not about the theories of it. It's just I want to see like the whole thing in that sense, because I like to know what we're looking at. And if it is an ancient artifact, man, that's just it's like um digging up dinosaur bones, man. It's the same kind of thing. You're looking at a piece of history. And I just don't understand why NASA kind of hides all of this in the background when so much of this stuff's coming out. And I'm sure the fear of people knowing more about this thing would be a lot less, knowing what it's there for. Like, I guess you can't really say what it's there for, but what it is, and that it's not going to hurt us.
I also remember too, which is sorry, just on another segue. I was actually watching something on the Black Knight satellite the other day as well. Just what kind of got me interested to do a podcast episode about this. But there have been a lot of interceptions from, say, ham radio operators, and one in particular was actually from, uh, I believe it was from one of the spacecraft that were saying that they were observing the alien craft again. I mean, that was coming from directly from one of the spacecraft from NASA. So where are we? Astronaut says alien spacecraft under observation. I mean, this is a long time ago. This was like in 1989. But for
Yeah.
that, they know. I mean, at the end of the day, they know. Why hide these things?
Well, exactly, and especially when everybody else is starting to see things that are not explained too, right? And it's happening more and more. And even with this whole subject with the Black Knight satellite, keeping things like this hidden doesn't really help decipher what it really is and why it's here. There's so many people on this planet, and you know, I think a lot of the time we look at these things and it's just it's kind of a, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or it's not real, it's a thermal blanket. They come up with all these different ideas and stories of it, like, but when you start to see things that doesn't make sense, it kind of takes all that away. And for me, I've always been one of those people that are like, I have to see it to believe it. But honestly, I've backed off from that because honestly, like a lot of the things that you see now, like the Black Knight satellite, there's no explanation. There's not really anything else you can say that what it is. Because if anything, it was an asteroid, or if it was some sort of space debris. There's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't think that, seeing and reading of what has happened and what is done. You're right. This thing could be just sitting there relaying, picking up our signals, sending signals, and vice versa. And we're just in the middle trying to decipher what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, I should have a little clip here on YouTube, which I believe is the actual audio as well. I was going to play that quickly. I've just sent you a link so you can hear it as well.
Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under abhorrence.
Nice and short, but that is supposedly a recording by a ham radio operator who records a lot of NASA transmissions. And I mean that is pretty cool. I mean it's hard to say for sure that that is legitimate, simply because it's a not a very verifiable fact. They're going to deny it flat out either way. But it's something that sort of makes you go, okay, that's a bit different.
FYI, I watched this last night actually. Yeah, it's funny that you brought this up. Actually, I watched this and I thought to myself, wow, that's, I can't, you can't argue that, so that kind of right there kind of makes me think, okay, well, there's so many things out there that are unidentified and stuff, so it kind of, makes sense. You really can't hoax something like that, really,
And
but
this is not the first time that NASA astronauts have been caught saying things that they shouldn't, or at least that they're not supposed to say. I mean, there's
yeah.
also, times that they've spoken about when they've gone to the dark side of the moon, and apparently it's not even a case of that they've lost transmission. It's that they just didn't want to broadcast that particular part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's another like whole different aspect too. Is is the moon? Because
That's a whole nother
whether
conversation.
well whether no, but whether or not like like this part of it's kind of goes with this because even with transmissions like with the black light satellite, can we even broadcast transmissions through the moon? You know what I mean? Like, is that one of those, or does it go around the moon? And maybe that's why some of the broadcasts in the background. But like you said, if they're hiding these kind of broadcasts, there's obviously something going on, and that could even go link with the Black Knight satellite. Maybe there is something on our moon, and they're watching it just from there. It's the same thing. Like you can't really see too much from our planet from the moon. Like it's a nice big blue ball, but you're not gonna see too much closer up. And if you have something like this relay sitting there, it makes it much easier for it to go around our planet and see everything in a closer view. So yeah, there's a lot of theories that I could see why this is here, but
Yeah,
even then,
and
it's like,
well, I think the whole moon conversation too is an episode of discussion all in its own right. But there's always the potential that the Black Knight satellite is the observation tool, and the place at which it's being controlled from could potentially be the moon, because I mean it's close enough that transmissions would be easy enough, quick enough. You try and control something from the other side of the universe, at least from our understanding and our level of technology, that would be virtually impossible.
was it our Voyagers, the probes that we had going? I don't even think they can even control those anymore. They're way past our solar system, so you got to
Are
think
they
in that aspect,
15 billion miles away from Earth or something along those lines?
right? And if they like, and they're still sending data back, which is pretty amazing for being that far out. So, but we're talking light years away too. If it was from another solar system or so. But even then, you'd have to have a very good signal. I mean, the best because you're going through like, well, there's a couple asteroid belts even before you even get into our solar system, before you even hit Earth. So if they were to send anything our way, or even have transmissions come and go, going through all this debris and everything else, you'd really have to have one of the best signals in the world. Like even us with the Voyagers, and even with Mars with the rover, us getting data back, that's within our solar system. So I believe, transmissions could happen from a far away, but it does also make sense for a point, you know, like the moon. It's so much easier. you can observe everything from that satellite. You can obviously from the dark side of the moon, you could take off or come back whenever you want. We'd never really even know you were there, unless we start putting satellites up around the moon to capture whatever's going on there. But
Yeah, and I always found it really interesting that the moon always faces the Earth. Like it does
yeah,
not actually
that's
rotate. As far as celestial
yeah,
bodies goes, that's a very unusual behavior.
exactly, and that's kind of what makes me think. Like you said, there must be something going on with that whole subject too, and that, um, which is a whole obviously different area, but it's something that is intriguing, and it does link with the Black Knight satellite in some sense because there's got to be some way that transmissions are being received and um put out there, and whether it's far distance or close up, it just makes more sense that the satellite is there for other civilizations to watch over us.
Other phenomena that I have read about in terms of the Black Knight satellite, and I'm not sure if you've come across this yourself, but there have been reports of strange lights and flashes or even beams that are emanating from the Black Knight satellite, which suggests an advanced level of technology, or at least, something that's not a space blanket. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Wasn't that an astronaut or something? One of them went up and saw a green glow or something around it, which spooked him out. And I, that's another thing. That green glow, for something to sit up in our atmosphere as long as it does and orbits our Earth. Now I know the moon is pulling away from our Earth so much. You'd think the same would be for our satellites too. Maybe not, but this satellite seems to stay in one orbit. But that green glow almost makes me think it's a shield of some sort. You know, if we like, it's another funny thing too is Biden would do. He would just shoot down an unknown object out of the sky. But here, we have the capabilities to send out rockets to space. And it's funny that nobody's actually, if this thing was that scary to NASA or the government, they'd just say, you know what, just blow it up, have it done with. I don't want to hear about this Black Knight satellite anymore. But it also makes me think these lights that come off of it, that illuminate around it, maybe a shield or some sort of, thing that sucks power. I don't know. It's really hard to say for that.
So do you think at some point maybe they have tried to take it out and haven't actually been able to?
I don't know. I've never really read anything on it. Honestly, if they had, they obviously didn't succeed in that sense. So, um, that's my whole aspect on it. Is if you think, if anybody like Reagan back, like most of these presidents back in their day, they were interested in the alien concept, so they probably wouldn't even have thought, well, let's go blow up these things. They were probably more interested in making contact. So, even back then, they were probably thinking, let's just leave it, or there's more to it that we don't even our population don't really know about it. But my idea of is like obviously it's been known. It's just they don't want to cause any issues. And really that makes sense too. Is why would you blow up something that could potentially bring back a whole race of something that you do not want to mess with, right?
That is very, very true. And on a final thought for the Black Knight satellite, another possibility that has dawned on me over the past few days, there is always talk that alien races are on Earth. There's various different races that have been spoken about that actually reside either in or on Earth. Now,
Yeah.
if this does in fact come from a different star system and it is some sort of relay station or observation point, could it not be simply that relay station for the race that is on the ground?
I That's even in a better. That's like, yeah, because we don't know what's really under our oceans or what's under us, for all we know. As humans have only drilled down so far, so we don't really know what's farther than that. And honestly, um, like the different species that could be here, one being reptilians. I'm pretty sure these guys or the species, sorry, could adapt to heat and adapt to a lot of things. And we don't know if they have technology. Well, they probably do have technology way more advanced. And I think that it's quite possible that a species here on our planet is observing from the skies as well. And they're just doing it hidden somewhere under us or somewhere right in front of our faces too, right? So because some aliens can look just like the blue-eyed blonde hair. They basically are a human. They're just a
The
hybrid, right?
Palladians.
Yeah, so they can walk around us no problem. So you're right. A lot of these aliens are shapeshifters, so they could change into one of us, and we would never know. So it does make that right there. I will agree with, because you never know. That we've never really looked down in the oceans, and there's a lot of sightings of UFOs or USOs, sorry, flying underwater and coming back out. So it's a possibility.
Absolutely. And takes us to the nearly the 45-minute mark. We're going to wrap this up for us today. But is there any final thoughts that you have before we go there?
Oh, not really, but yeah. I think the final thought of this is like, whether you believe or not believe, there's a lot of things that are on the internet, conspiracy theories. But I think looking into this kind of stuff is really, especially this topic with the Black Knight satellite, is something interesting enough to look at seriously, because a lot of things we can't explain out there, and there's so many mysteries with our world and the universe. So it's really nice to be able to talk about this and, really get and delve into the topic and see where it goes. So it's, really good to be able to do this kind of stuff and bring out the ideas for people that, are skeptics on it, sort of thing.
The Black Knight satellite, it has been around for a reported 13,000 years or more. Now, whether you believe that or not is entirely up to you. However, if you want to continue this discussion, maybe put forward some theories that you have, or discuss ones that have already been put forward, you can head to the Grey Line Podcast Discord channel.
And that's all for the episode this week. And don't forget, more on Grey Line, you can visit our YouTube or our website. Follow us on Twitter, and you can always support the podcast through Ko-Fi